Hey everyone, FPS Chasley here, and welcome to the first of my mission editor tutorials. Yes, going to be doing the mission editor tutorials here. Thought this would be a good thing to do. We can start out simple. I wouldn't consider myself an expert with the mission editor, but I definitely know my way around it, at least to some extent. The things I don't really know are the more complex scripting things, and those are more a question of thinking out those kinds of problems than knowing the editor per se. Yeah, so this first video will just be a familiarization with the interface of the mission editor. So let's just jump on in. So here's the home screen. And here you see a map of the world. You can use your arrow keys to get around here. I don't think you can get around any other way. Use your arrow keys to get around. Left click doesn't do anything. I remember opening this up as a kid and thinking, why can't I do anything in this mission editor? But yeah, so you're going to want to right click. So let's go ahead and just pick one here where I tend to do things in my home area of Maryland. Okay, so you can choose your mission type here, single mission, campaign mission, tells you where your map is centered on. Also, by the way, this square here is always 600 by 600 miles, and it gets crazy like this at the top because this is an issue of projecting a 3D surface onto a 2D plane, a 3D spherical surface onto a 2D plane here. So it looks crazy up here. It's still 600 miles by 600 miles as a square. It's the same here as it is up there, but we'll do it down here in Balmer. So you can choose single mission or campaign mission. Campaign missions, you can string them together and you can have information from one mission go into the next mission, but we'll just start with single mission because that's a more complex topic. And this is just a familiarization, just showing you all the interface here. All right, so here's our map, our 600 by 600. For some reason, this window is not perfectly square, so you can still kind of pan left or right, but not up and down. So you got lat long of the cursor down here, height over land, depth over water, your range scale, your present zoom. You can zoom in. This is just like the nav map in the game here. This is our scenario here, unnamed scenario. I guess you can name it somewhere in here. So up here, I guess let's start at the top, work our way around. We got our toolbar ribbon up here. Mission. This is basically the same as just having like a file thing. You can put a password on a file. My friend Tekken has hacked into one of these. I've had him hack into one of these scenarios before to get the password out. So that's fun. New mission, obviously, load mission, campaign mission, save. Import, so this is fun. You can take missions from 688I or Fleet Command or Subcommand, import them into dangerous waters. I've had mixed results with this. Sometimes it'll bring in the mission, and then stuff is strewn about everywhere. Like, it'll still have the same objectives and entities, but they'll be shifted by 200 miles or something, so it's a little iffy. Recent files, of course. Campaign, so you can start a new campaign here. You give it a name, and then you can add in your specific missions that you've created to put in here, and you can change the order. Then you can edit a specific mission from this screen, which is a very nice feature. Remove them. And then you can edit a campaign too, of course. Edit. This is mostly just copy-paste kind of stuff, selection. Setup, this is where we start getting into interesting stuff here. So we got define mission description. This is what shows up in the bottom left when you click a mission in the single mission screen. This tends to be like all the background kind of stuff. Mission title, this is the name, and then the stars indicate difficulty. So you can set what you think the difficulty of your mission is. We got alliances. This will come more into context when we get to this kind of point, but you create sides, Schnugel Dorp. There's your one alliance for you. Then you can add sides to Schnugeldorp. Then we can add another one, the Squirmies. Then you can add another one here. So the Squirmies have side 3 in their alliance. Schnugeldorp has side 1. Then you can delete alliances too. There you go. This just comes into play with like ROE and who's attacking who and all that kind of stuff. Rules of engagement. Yeah, so for each of the sides you have in the mission, you got Set 8 sides. You can tell them to be wartime, peacetime. Own ship must survive. So for the mission to be a success, you cannot die. I don't know that I've ever played a mission where this isn't the case. It's the default behavior to have that turned on, but you can play around with it. Environmental conditions. Okay, here you go. Sea state. I'm sure there's some website online that defines what sea states mean, but you can set different sea states from 1. Don't do 0. I've tried 0 before. It's screwy. Your sonar has no noise on it, so the sonar messes up. It's kind of like a bug. They let you put it in, but you shouldn't use it because it's buggy. The game's not meant to work that way. The ocean's like smooth as glass, and there's no like noise background on your sonar. It's weird. So don't go below sea state of 1, and it lets you go to sea state of 5, which is pretty rough. Time of day, pretty obvious here, but this is on a 24-hour military scale. Bottom type, rock, mud, sand. So rock, you have your best sound transmission, assuming you have a bottom limited SSP down here. Check out for the link in the top right there if you want to see my SSP video. I don't know why I put on like internet guy voice. Mud is about 50% of the transmission power of rock, and then sand is about 25% of the transmission power of rock, so drops off pretty quick. If you're making a mission for RA, I would suggest avoiding sand bottom type altogether. It just gets way too hectic. Like, you don't end up seeing people until you're like 4,000 yards away from them, and then things just start happening really quickly. So I would say mud and rock only for RA. And of course, this is only applicable if you're using bottom limited. Month. You can change this. I think that it will affect, sunrise, sunset times, that kind of stuff. In theory, it's supposed to affect sonar performance too, but I'm not sure if that. I am not sure if that is modeled in the game. Weather: clear, puffy clouds, overcast, rain. SSP, check out that video again. But surface duct, you have a layer here. Bottom limited, no layer, and then convergence zone, you have a layer with 30, 60, 90 mile convergence zones, assuming it's deep enough, of course. Like convergence zone isn't going to do anything up here on the continental shelf, but out here where it's 10,000 feet, yeah, that'll do something. And then finally, cloud height, which is really just an aesthetic thing. I don't think it affects anything. So wind region here, you can add a wind region. We can drag this in here. You can specify your wind stuff that you want here. It's all pretty self-explanatory. Then you can remove the wind region you made, of course. And then you can add a water region. This is where you put currents in the game. This is kind of screwy. I wouldn't really ever recommend adding in currents. They let you put in like really slight currents, so I would probably do that. I wouldn't really go above 1 knot current. That's a pretty strong current. 2 knots. It can get really screwy when you're in a submarine and you start going at these really low speeds, and the current starts pushing your toad like in front of your submarine. I'd say keep your current beneath 1 knot max if you really want to do it a little bit. So what it really does is if you have a current that's flowing, south to north here, and you're driving east, the current will push you along towards the north a little bit, so you won't be going directly along this way. You'd have to change your course into it a little bit. You have to like tack a little bit. I don't think tack is the proper word, but you got what I'm saying there. And then, it's defaulted to show you all the regions. You can uncheck that for clutter purposes, and then you can remove any water regions you made. View, so bathymetry. Turning this on and off doesn't really make any difference in my opinion. Scale, grid lines. Yeah, the grid lines correspond to what zoom levels, scale range you got down there. So that's pretty helpful to know how far away certain things are. Down here 10 miles away, that's definitely good for playability, timing purposes of a mission. And this is all just filters. This is all just stuff you want to see. This is all pretty obvious here. View full screen 3D, what is that? I don't know what that does. Let's try and mess with that for a second. We're jumping ahead here. We're jumping the gun. Oh, that's fun. Okay. Never knew about that. And escape takes you out. we'll get to that in a second. We'll get to all what the hell I just did in a second there. Add. Okay. Transiting waypoints and waypoint, you need to have an object selected to do those. You can put in a minefield, which is, yeah, it's a map object. Sonobuoy field. So you can drag this out here. 15 buoys across, 7 buoys down. You can pick your buoy type here. Very cool stuff. Dive far, shallow. Low far, shallow. Side 1. I've entered too many sonobuoys. 100 can be entered. Okay. We'll do 10 by 5. And then boom, there you go. All these sonobuoys just added in. So that's fun. We'll undo that. Air corridor. So this is a place where like planes will fly through. Not too up to snuff here with it here. You got your options here. So you can set the width, how many planes will spawn per hour. And I think this just spawns in. Okay, you can choose what kind of aircraft you want it to spawn in. But yeah, they'll just fly through. So this is good for like if you want a long mission with civilian airliners to fly through. You can do that kind of thing. And then standalone aircraft. This would be like some kind of P3 that you put in or something like that. Something that's not tied to a destroyer. So we can go ahead down to United States. Put in P3. Put in a P8. I'm on Lawami right now, by the way. And then P8 Poseidon. And it's a standalone aircraft that'll just fly around. You can also put in... So environmental object, here we got biologics or icebergs. Pretty self-explanatory there. Dynamic location. This, I'm not terribly familiar with what this is. Okay, so dynamic location here is a spawn point. I just looked at the manual. So if you put in 3 different objects and 3 different dynamic locations here, and you all set them to spawn at a dynamic location, these 3 objects will randomly spawn at a different point. It'll be randomized each time you play, so that's interesting. Again, if you want to know more, go check out the manual. There's a plethora of information in there, lots of good stuff. And these are just things to make your maps pretty. Add some seasoning to your mission steak there, you know, give it a little more, give it a little zing, a little character. You can add some labels, some lines, some circles. Okay, and then coming to our last drop down here, we got dynamic groups. So dynamic groups are interesting. They're fun. Group apply to all. I think this is only saying this because we don't have any platforms yet. But so you can make a group of ships and you can give them a dynamic group. And this is the probability that they will spawn when missions start. So this is 0 to 100. Obviously 100 means it's always going to be there. 0 means it's never going to be there. So you're just wasting your time making a dynamic group. Minimum and maximum. So if you have 5 ships, you can say minimum 2. And that would mean of these 5 ships, 2 of them will always spawn in, any 2, random 2. And then maximum, you could say 4. So you have 5 different ships that could spawn in, but you only want 2 to 4 of them to spawn in. So that's a dynamic group. A lot of these are you're meant to add these in for a lot of replayability in your missions. A lot of variability each time you play. Then you can come here and edit your groups. Trigger precedence. Set the order in which triggers must be achieved. So this is quickly diving into more complex things. This is basically just saying, you know, to beat the mission, you have to first sink the Sakula and then deploy special forces. It's kind of that kind of thing. Oh yeah, here you go. To make goal trigger 1 only achievable after goal trigger 2, make trigger 2 a child of trigger 1. So if you can only deploy the special forces after you've successfully sank that Akula, you would make the special forces goal a child of the Akula goal. So once you sink the Akula, then you can go sink the special forces. Not sink the special forces, deploy the special forces. So if you don't sink the Akula, you can't deploy the special forces successfully. Alrighty, so that's all that up here. Lots of stuff going on, lots of stuff. And then down here we got, this is basically just showing all. So if you're at this thing at this default view here, you'll see triggers, dynamic locations, standalone aircraft, any of these kinds of objects. You'll see a whole list of every single thing in this mission: triggers, scripts, If you want to filter that down and only see certain things, then you click group, you only see the groups. Click triggers, you only see the triggers, etc. Side, you only see the things that belong to a certain side. And then this will sort it out by type, so you can see all your surface stuff, all your sub stuff, all your aircraft. And these are your scripts. So down here, this is how we spawn in some stuff here. This is how we spawn in submarine, little submarine object. Did this earlier, so you got all your countries to choose from, and then you got your submarines to pick. You can give them, you can choose which hull number you want. Tactics, several different tactics here. Not really going to get into what each of these mean. That might be for a later video. You can check the manual in the meantime. But yeah, a bunch of different tactics you can do here for your submarines. Speed at start, depth at start, target mode, attack, track, avoid. And then if you pick one of these, then you got to pick a target platform. You got your probability of inclusion. This is self-explanatory. You can use this if you want to actually like type in a latitude and longitude, and then you can give it a more unique name that makes it easier to find in this listing here. And then 3D is unavailable until we select a platform, so let's select one here. You can select countries that don't have any submarines, by the way. And here you go. Here's our little submarine here. And then down here, this is for surface ships. This one's pretty self-explanatory too. If you choose platforms that you can be played as, a lot of these options open up a lot here. I might be getting outside the scope of this first video that I want to do here. So we'll just go over this briefly. So this is how you spawn in a surface ship. This one here, this little arrow to an X, this is for a trigger. And triggers, this is how your missions get fun and dynamic. You use triggers here. It's how you add goals, how you add events, all kinds of stuff. And yeah, this can be a whole video right here talking about triggers. The building here, pretty self-explanatory, land-based object. You can spawn in 155 millimeter artillery, or an oil derrick, or NATO soldiers. It's like I'm playing DCS or something, man. What kind of guns they got there? Can't zoom in any further. And this last one here, what is this last one? This is for scripts. So scripts are something that I am not terribly familiar with. Yes, I am. This is true. So scripts, this is, here you're using the language of doctrine, using doctrine language here. So this is kind of like, if you have any kind of programming experience, this will be familiar. But if you do not, this will take a little bit of time to get used to. Okay, so I was confused a little bit about what I was seeing here. So scripts are like a way to make something happen in the mission at a certain time. Normally with triggers, you need to have a certain number of conditions need to be met before a trigger fires. But scripts are like kind of hard coded in. It's kind of, think of it like a movie, you know. It's like something's gonna happen regardless of like what the player does. So you can use this to make something blow up without it being attacked. You can add an effect. You can create a group at a certain time, kind of like in Tom Clancy SSN. When you launch your Tomahawks, there'd be like a submarine that then spawns in and starts shooting torpedoes at you, something like that. Something to kind of make kind of add some like a direction to a mission, something that's not completely random or trigger based. You can add in specific events to happen at certain points of time in the mission. You can set the tempo, set the rules of engagement. So yeah, if you come here to triggers, you can also have this kind of thing. If you check this, use doctrine language here. I know I'm really getting into this. This is where you get more. This is more of what I was talking about earlier with kind of computer science stuff. You got like if statements and conditionals and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, we'll be getting into this later. But yeah. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this first tutorial for the mission editor. Really just kind of an overview. There's a lot to the mission editor here. Oh, we still have a little bit here to check out. So if you select a platform here, you can right click it and do a number of other things here too. You can see center ranges on this thing. So what kind of sonar we got going on here? You can do all kinds of crazy stuff. So let's set this to Brazil, broadsword, that doodad there. So if we come back here to this, you can do view sensor range spherical against FF47. And this will show you like when this submarine can detect that frigate. I'm not sure what the basis for this is. Is this for 0 knots or 1 knot or the current speed of the target? So I'm not sure how this works, but it's kind of cool. Kind of gives you a sense of how far your platforms can see for spacing, pacing purposes. You can also add to a formation. There presently are no formations, so that's why this isn't showing up. And then you can add triggers to it. This trigger is tied to this boat. So you can have like general triggers that kind of just live out in the world. And then you have triggers that are tied to specific platforms. So if this thing does something that can affect this trigger. There's some other grayed out things here. So if you have like a parry, you can add a Seahawk for that parry to be in flight already. You can add an air station, and this is where the Seahawk would go out to a point. Once the Seahawk runs out of fuel or ammo, maybe just fuel, it'll then return to base, and then something else will then go back out to refill that air station. Air corridors, it's kind of the same thing, but that's for land-based. And then you can have like a flight schedule too. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this first video here for getting familiar with the mission editor. There's a lot going on here, so I hope running through all that kind of helped you out a little bit. Not sure where I'm going to go next for this. We'll probably start working on basic scenarios here, but I thought this was a good place to start. So I'll see you guys then. Have a good one, and as always, good hunting.